welcome back to my channel. If you are new here and like the video, be sure to hit the like and subscribe button for more content. Thank you for watching. Welcome back and thank you for joining us for the third day of the fall marathon. This is the third and final part of As I Lay Here Dying, DaiSugaIwaOi 3-shot special. Now, I warned a bit yesterday in the last part that there are a few trigger warnings, which I will list them here. So first we have a lot of mild language use that it might not be triggering to some people, but that is there's just a lot of language because it was one of my headcanons as Iwazumi. If he gets hurt, he curses a lot. Another trigger warning, this is just going to be super gory. There's going to be very descriptive of blood and just everything. Finally, just go ahead and get the tissues. Just get the tissues. Anyways, let's get to the angst. While he still went to the coffee shop every day, completely forgetting about the library and its remodeling, there was this tense atmosphere that none of the baristas could figure out. It was like he was being kept at a distance. The weather was changing. Each day got colder, with each night freezing, leaving frost in its wake. Iwazumi's phone rang, pulling him from his thoughts. Hello? Iwa-chan! The shorter rolled his eyes, even though the latter couldn't see. Are you coming to the shop yet? Iwazumi agreed to help with the decorations, taking down the autumn decorations in turn for the holidays. Christmas decorations were more time-consuming and dulling. He was happy to help. Yeah, I'm on my way. I had to grab some coffee first. This is a coffee shop. You could have just gotten coffee here. Oh, don't worry. I'll be getting some when I get there. What? Iwazumi had to hold back his laughter. That isn't healthy. What is it? That sounded like Daichi. Hajime is drinking too much caffeine. The shoulder stopped mid-step. Did he just say Hajime? He felt blood rush to his cheeks. I'll see you when I get there. He hung up immediately, feeling like he slipped up. That was the definition of malfunctioning. I've got to get my act together. This won't be good for any of us this way. He continued walking down the sidewalk, only a block to the coffee shop. He walked around some broken glass, not really thinking much about it. It wasn't until he heard the sound of more glass shattering that he stopped moving. He spun around, gazing at what appeared to be an empty alleyway. Hello? There was no movement or other sounds, so he shrugged it off. Odd. He glanced one more time before turning back around and jumped back, seeing a woman right in front of him, merely inches from him. What the hell? Hajime. She peered through her long, raven locks. But that voice. Mom? Hajime. She said again, but there was something about her. Something distant. I thought I told you not to get into contact with me again. How do you even know where I live? She grabbed his hand. What are you... Hajime. Her voice seemed more forced. Something was up. He felt a sudden panic. He wanted to run out of the alleyway, into the store, and back into their loving arms. But he couldn't. He couldn't run. It was like the cold made his feet frozen to the ground. Mom, I'm not your mother. His lips thinned. Right. I've tried so hard. You ungrateful brat. Within seconds, she pounced on him, successfully pinning him to the ground, his head barely missing the pile of glass shards on the pavement. Iwazumi obviously had the advantage. He was bigger and had much more muscle than she did. Something held him back. She was blood. While he never truly viewed her as his mother, he was bounded by their blood, so he couldn't hurt her. She reeled back and slammed a wooden beam over his head, immediately knocking him down. It was just a wooden beam, yet I felt like an iron mace. Why am I the villain? Why does everyone make me the villain? I never wanted you. But I raised you. And this is what I get in return? Her words hurt. Far more than the blow to his head. It hurt. Get off of me! His head was throbbing, the world was spinning. The warm liquid dripping down the side of his head kept him alert. He needed to run to the shop. He wasn't safe. Not here, not anywhere. Only in their arms. He felt a fiery blaze in his abdomen. With wide olive green eyes, he traced the source of the pain. A piece of steel was sticking out of his stomach, with his mother's hand holding the handle. He had been stabbed. No one can call me a villain. You crazy? He strained. The pain seemed to only increase and never die down. A crimson red began to pool in his shirt. Fuck. He rammed his elbow into the woman's face, knocking her out and off of him. He was panicking. Fuck. Fuck, shit, fuck! He hissed in cold air, feeling a sharp pain in his chest. Fuck. His adrenaline was pumping through the roofs. He wasn't thinking clearly. He always knew his pain tolerance was decent, but never once thought that would be put to the test. He found tears prickling down his cheeks. Fuck. He forced himself up from the ground, not wanting to let the darkness take over. He didn't want to die. He wanted to live. The shop was less than a block away. He could make it. Each step was like torture, sending each nerve in his body into an inferno. His hand was clasped tightly onto his abdomen, desperate to keep the blood inside as best as he could. His blood, the warmth was leaving. He felt cold, tired. He saw the shop. It was in eyesight now. Just a little farther. He trusted his mother. He trusted that she would respect his wishes and let him live. Live his own life. Now, he was dying. From his own ignorance. Damn it. It seemed the only thing he could manage to get out were curse words. He crossed the street and made it to the glass doors. The store looked empty, so quiet and serene. He almost felt guilty he was about to ruin the peace, yet he didn't care. He wanted them. He wanted to feel safe, even if it was for just one last time. He wanted one last moment with them. To be held as he slowly fell into his final slumber, till the end. He opened the door, leaving bloody handprints on the glass paneling and handle before he collapsed at the entrance, suddenly feeling the energy drain from him. No. Not yet. He isn't with them yet. Not yet. He wouldn't allow it. He dragged himself with his arm, while the other held on tightly to his wound that seemed to continue to spew blood. The smell. It smelled like coffee and buttered pastries, just like the first time he walked in. It was so warm and inviting. He heard footsteps rush down the stairs to what he assumed was one of the baristas from their apartment. It's about time you got here. We've been waiting on you. Sugawara froze upon the terrifying sight that was Iwazumi on the floor, barely hanging onto consciousness, and his life that was escaping him. He couldn't recall all that happened in that moment, but he felt his throat tear open and go raw from his own screams that filled the quiet store. He ran to Iwazumi and scooped him into his arms, trying to pull him up. It wasn't long until the other two were at the scene upon hearing Suga's bone-chilling scream. Hajime! Earlier, he heard that same name with malice laced in the woman's voice that claimed to be his mother. It made him sick. But hearing it from someone like Koshi made the pain seem a bit more numb. Aikawa stepped aside to frantically call for an ambulance. He didn't understand. He was just on the phone with Hajime only minutes ago. Everything was okay, right? So how did everything escalate so quickly? What even happened? He didn't know. He didn't have the answers to his questions. He swore at that moment, whoever did this would pay. Daichi moved Iwazumi's hand from the wound to try to inspect it. Once upon a time, he wanted to be an officer, so he was well acquainted to blood and gory things in general. But this was different. This was someone he loved and cared about. This was like a punch in the face. This hurt. He paused, seeing the shoulder clasped onto his sleeve. Stop. I need to do something about the bleeding. You're losing too much. Stop. Please. He was confused. He was helping him save his life. So why did he want him to stop? Iwazumi felt his eyes grow heavy. He was losing time. His throat burned, and he turned to the side, coughing up blood that burned his lungs. Iwa! Sugawara ran over to grab a towel to sop up the blood, just as Oikawa got off the phone. The ambulance is on its way. Just hang on. He stopped, feeling their shoulders wet, cold hand on his. I'm dying. Don't say that! You're going to be okay. He placed a towel on his stomach and felt a hand on his head where he got hit. If this did anything, he spent his time as he laid there, dying, thinking about what led up to this point. Possibly being born was his downfall, but he didn't want to be bitter. All of his regrets, dreams, memories, it all came to mind. Was this what they called life flashing before your eyes? Was this what happened before you die? What happened? It was only now he noticed the three baristas were crying. Crying for him. My mother, she... He couldn't finish, finding it too painful to continue. Both physically and mentally. She did this? He didn't respond, but he didn't deny it either. It was getting dangerously dark and cold and quiet. He felt himself slipping away. No. Stay awake. Hajime, you have to stay awake. Do you remember the first day I came here? All three of them nodded. We were stupid busy. And Daichi stole my order. He laughed, wiping his tears from his damp cheek. I just came to find a place to study. I've never even heard of the place before. When I walked in, I knew right then that I was home. His voice cracked, feeling tears fill his eyes. Daichi pulled him closer into his lap with Toru and Koshi on either side of Hajime. I couldn't distinguish it then, because I've never known a home. But I know now. The scene was heart-wrenching. Christmas decorations were long left behind, and sirens were blaring in the distance. The smell of coffee lingered. I never valued life like I do now, because you gave me a reason. A purpose. Akawa hiccuped, not tearing away from the ladder, not once. I love you. Sugawara gasped while the other two's eyes widened. You love us? Iwazumi sobbed. He never planned on confessing. We love you too, so please, hang on, please. He cried into Hajime's chest. Since he never planned on confessing, he never prepared on anything like rejection or acceptance. But knowing that the feeling was mutual, right now even, it hurt. Why did he have to get stabbed by his own mother to finally have the guts to confess? He thinks rejection would be a better alternative than this. This gave him a frightening reason to live. Something that might not be plausible. Because he was dying in Daichi's arms. He consistently felt his eyes wanting to roll back into the darkness, but held on every time he heard one of them begging him to stay. It was only until paramedics were at the scene and took him out of their arms that he felt himself let go. And into the darkness he went. Daichi closed the store today. He planned on getting decorations up and opening up a little later than usual, but not close for the day. He hadn't planned on spending the day in the hospital, pacing back and forth, waiting to hear on his crush's condition. Crush? Lover? He hadn't really figured out what they were yet. He held on to that thought, saying that they'll figure that out once Iwazumi was healed. Because he would. Right? They had gotten there in the morning, and it was well into evening before they heard anything. Apparently, close to a whole third of his blood volume was lost. Any more, and he most certainly would have died. If the knife had been pulled out, he probably wouldn't have even made it to the store. He had a concussion and would most likely suffer from stuff like anemia and low blood pressure, all pretty common after losing the excessive amount of blood. His mother was soon found by the police and locked behind bars, which Daichi commended for, and for once, he wished he gave up the shop and became an officer, just so that he could do that. And that alone. Whenever they were allowed in the room, Iwazumi was still asleep. He was hooked up to a lot of tubes that none of them knew what they were for, but they kept him alive. He was asleep, yet still looked so exhausted. The only evidence and clear thing that reminded them that he was still alive was the annoying, steady beeping from the monitor. Every time it quickened or lowered its pace at the slightest sent them panicking, afraid that the procedure went wrong, or his body was rejecting the treatment, or that he was dying all over again. They were reminded time and time again by doctors and nurses that it was just picking up the tiny movements Iwazumi made, whether it's a twitch or mumble. That meant he was waking up soon. And the longer they waited and each minute that went by sent them questioning all over again. It was truly a dreary and repetitive process that exhausted them out. Soon enough, they were asleep. Aikawa was in the chair next to the hospital bed, while Daichi and Sugawara were crammed onto the couch, sleeping. In the dead of the night, Hajime stirred in his slumber, waking up in a sterile room with white sheets. The smell of antiseptic flooded his nose, and he didn't like it. It made him feel panicked. He was dying in their arms with the smell of coffee. It was okay. So why was he here, alone, cold, and smelling this? Iwazumi's panicking was not just internal. It sent his heart monitor beeping through the roofs, making Aikawa wake up since he was the closest. He was relieved that he was awake, but equally horrified at his state. He quickly grabbed his hand and pulled him into a hug, minding his injuries. Iwazumi gasped upon taking in Aikawa's scent, which reminded him of the shop, of home. Kawa? Yes, I'm here. You're okay. You're okay. He broke into a fresh round of tears, relieved that Iwazumi was alive. He for sure thought that he was gone. Their crying woke the other two, who was quick to arrive at their side. From there, they shared a hug, not ever wanting to let go. Iwazumi was released later that day, after all of the tests came back normal. He was on strict bed rest for the next week, and staying at their apartment above the shop, so that there was always someone keeping an eye on him. The three baristas would take turns, checking up on him, making sure he was eating and resting. Sugawara even had to take away his laptop so that he would rest, followed by Daichi pinning him to the bed until he got exhausted and fell asleep. None of them knew how stubborn he was until this accident, but they were glad and happy to see more sides of him than before. Hajime? The four were sitting at the dinner table, eating, and about ready for bed. Yeah? He shoved his fork in his mouth, munching on the broccoli from his plate. Do you remember what you said before you were taken to the hospital? He paused. The more time went on, the more fuzzy that day was. It could easily just be the amount of blood he lost, though. Sort of? Do you remember that you confessed? The raven choked on his broccoli. I what? I love you. He did. How could have he forgotten such a thing? I did. He took his fork and moved the stray pieces of broccoli around his plate. Hajime. Okawa hesitantly grabbed his hand. I'm not sure if you remember, but we feel the same. If I'm being completely honest, I think I found love at first sight. I never thought I would find another person I love. He laughed. That, and when you totally ogled over my thighs. You knew? The table erupted in laughter all over again. He does have some nice thighs. I truly don't blame you. Can we please stop talking about this? He was a burning, bright red, with his hands covering his face in an attempt to cover his blush, which was all in vain. What we are trying to get at is I know you just experienced something traumatic and out of this world, something that no one should ever have to go through. But whenever you are ready, would you want to be our boyfriend? He blinked. And blinked again. Did he hear that right? Did they want him to be their boyfriend? What? Why? Why? What do you mean? He's just an outsider. He can't mess us up. How could he form any of this into words? His admiration and affection was only supposed to be kept from afar. Never once did he think that he would have to confront those feelings. If you think even for a second that you don't belong, you're wrong. He couldn't help but laugh underneath his breath. Daichi was always observant. This time was no different. How? You guys have a history, something that runs far back. He took a deep breath, feeling winded thanks to his injuries. I sometimes can't help but think, maybe I'm just barging in, like I have no right. Don't say that. We wouldn't offer unless we didn't mean it. Sugawara grabbed his other hand that was clenching to the fork in a dangerous manner. We love you. You have every right to express your feelings. And love who you love. He felt his eyes stinging. It seemed lately all he could do was cry, but this was a different type of crying. This was happy, full of love and joy. Iwazumi got up and ran into Koshi's arms, failing to keep his tears in any longer. All he ever wanted was to feel and be loved. It took 20 years, but he was there. Okay. He was home. This concludes the end to As I Lay Here Dying 3 shots, and may I just say, this has made me realize I really hate doing the voiceovers based on the villain. That was absolutely terrible. And the more that I think about it, and I can't help but think this, Making voiceovers is basically having a conversation with yourself, and I kind of feel stupid. Anyways, let's just go ahead and do the fall marathon question for day 3. Okay, we are at day 3 of the fall marathons. Do you carve pumpkins, like for fall, traditionally? I guess, I don't know. And if so, what is your favorite design? That was definitely a mess. But yes, just comment below. Again, this is completely optional. You do not have to participate if you do not want to. And I will see you guys tomorrow where we will do the 4th part of the blind prank series. Thank you for watching. As always, if you'd like to be kept up to date, check out any of my social medias. I hope that you all have a wonderful day or evening.